You have turned all of these communications over to the FBI.
Yep.
They won't tell you, they won't tell anybody what they do with them, but I mean, you're privy to the Bitcoin wallet.
Yeah, and so far no money has been deposited.
The doorbell camera captures it at 11:47 p.m. A masked figure at the front door of a 71-year-old woman's home in Tucson, Arizona. Armed, deliberate, gone within minutes, and so is she. Nancy Guthrie, mother of one of the most recognized faces in American television, vanishes without a trace into a desert night. 75 days later, her family has received not one, but 2 rounds of ransom notes. The FBI has chased a Bitcoin wallet to a dead end. And a retired federal agent, one who spent her career authorizing wiretaps on organized crime, is publicly telling Savannah Guthrie's family to pay $34,000 into a cryptocurrency wallet. Not to bring Nancy home, to unmask whoever is on the other side. What she's proposing has a name inside federal law enforcement, and if she's right about what it could produce, the family may be staring at the only move they have left. Nancy Guthrie was not a woman who made a fuss about herself. She raised her children in the kind of Midwestern quiet that doesn't produce headlines, the kind of life measured in church potlucks and grandchildren's recitals and phone calls made every Sunday without fail. When her daughter Savannah rose to anchor the Today Show, Nancy didn't change. She watched from the same living room. She clipped newspaper articles the way mothers do. She was, by every account from people who knew her, a woman whose identity was rooted not in who her daughter was, but in who she herself had always been. Steady, present, unhurried. By the time she relocated to Tucson, Arizona, she had built a life that moved at a retiree's pace. Walks in the morning when the desert air was still cool enough to breathe without effort. A porch that faced west so she could watch the lights shift in the evening. A neighborhood quiet enough that a masked figure at the front door at 11:47 p.m. would register on a doorbell camera as something so wrong it would burn itself into the memory of every detective who later sat down to review the footage. She was 71 years old. She was home. And then she wasn't. The footage is precise in the way surveillance footage always is and always isn't. It tells you the what with mechanical indifference. It tells you nothing about the why. A masked suspect. Armed. The blood on the porch discovered afterward. A black glove found approximately 2 miles from the residence, recovered by investigators and submitted for DNA analysis. The outline of a crime is there in those details. The person who committed it is not. What makes the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie different from the thousands of missing persons cases that never break through the national noise is not only that her daughter is Savannah Guthrie, it is that from the very first week, something entered this investigation that doesn't enter most. A ransom note, then another, and then a Bitcoin wallet with a specific dollar amount attached to it, waiting to be activated like a trap that might be set for the family, or might, depending on who you ask, be a trap the family could set for someone else. The FBI spent weeks tracing the Bitcoin address embedded in the first ransom note. They brought in federal cryptocurrency analysts. They ran the wallet through the blockchain. They did everything the Bureau's Virtual Assets Unit was built to do. And then Harvey Levin, the founder of TMZ, a man in direct contact with both the family and law enforcement throughout this investigation, sat down on camera and said the Bureau had tried and come up empty. His exact words, "I never thought the perfect crime could look like this. This is 2026. And someone out there has figured out how to disappear not just a person, but themselves." To understand what is happening in this case right now, you have to understand who is speaking and why her voice carries the weight it does. Jennifer Coffin Daffer spent nearly 3 decades inside the FBI. Her specialties were not white-collar fraud or financial crime in the abstract. She worked gangs, narcotics, organized crime, counterintelligence, and Title III electronic surveillance, the federal statute that governs court-authorized wiretaps. That last specialty is not a footnote. It is the lens through which everything she has said publicly about the Guthrie case should be read, because the tactic she is recommending did not originate with cryptocurrency. It originated with the phone lines she spent her career listening to. She now serves as law and justice contributor at News Nation and hosts a case analysis podcast. When she posted about the Guthrie case on her verified account, she was not speculating from the outside. She was applying a specific operational principle from her own career to a new medium. The Wire, in her framing, has simply changed shape. What she posted was direct. Bitcoin, she wrote, is highly traceable. The blockchain can identify someone associated with an account. Pseudonymity is not the same as anonymity. And then she asked a question she immediately answered herself. Was unmasking the sender worth $34,000? Yes. 4 days later, in a Newsweek interview, she named the tactic. She called it tickling the wire. Put half a Bitcoin into the system, she said, and watch what happens to it. The phrase has a history that most viewers of cable news would not know. Title III of the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1968 governs court-authorized interception of communications in real time. When federal agents obtain a Title III authorization, they cannot simply sit and wait. They must demonstrate that the surveillance is producing investigative value, or the authorization gets pulled. That operational pressure over decades produced a set of tactics. One of them is exactly what the name suggests. Create a stimulus. Provoke the target to communicate on the intercepted line. Observe what they say. In a wiretap context, the wire is a phone. In this case, the wire is a wallet address sitting on a public blockchain, waiting. There is something in the public record that almost nobody covering this case has examined carefully. The first ransom note, sent in early February, contained a Bitcoin address. That address generated on-chain activity on February 11th. Blockchain forensics analysts told the New York Post that any movement on that wallet could lead somewhere. Weeks passed, and then Harvey Levin went on camera and said the Bureau had taken action on that wallet, and the action came up dry. If that statement is accurate, the FBI already ran the play. Coffin Daffer is recommending. They already tickled the wire, and whoever is on the other end of this case walked right through it. To understand what came up dry actually means in this context, you have to understand what the Bureau is working with and where those tools reach their limits. Bitcoin is not anonymous. It is pseudonymous. Those are different words with different consequences. Anonymous would mean unidentifiable by design. Pseudonymous means identifiable under a different name. In this case, a wallet address, which is a string of letters and numbers that functions as a consistent public identifier for every transaction that wallet has ever conducted. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every connection to every other wallet it has ever touched. All of it logged on a public ledger, distributed across tens of thousands of computers, updated block by block in real time. Any person with an internet connection can look up a wallet address and see its entire transaction history. The transparency is total. The only thing hidden is the real-world identity of the person who controls the private key that unlocks it. That identity gap closes, incrementally, through any interaction the wallet has with the mainstream financial system. Cryptocurrency exchanges operating under financial regulation are legally required to collect Know Your Customer documentation from their users. Government identification, proof of address, photograph, phone number. Those records are held by the exchange and produced under subpoena. When funds from an anonymous wallet are sent to an exchange account held under a real name, the blockchain draws a line from a pseudonym to a person. That is the pivot point. That is what tickling the wire is designed to trigger. But the failure modes are real and well documented. A mixer service can fragment the transaction trail, distributing funds across hundreds of wallets in a pattern that obscures the origin. An exchange based in a jurisdiction uncooperative with American legal process can receive the funds and refuse to respond to a subpoena. An account set up under a stolen or fabricated identity terminates the trace at the identity document rather than the person. Each of these counter-tactics requires operational discipline to execute. Each also leaves its own forensic residue, and none of them is automatic. The sender has to have known to set them up before sending the first note. The Bureau is not working without infrastructure here. In October 2021, the Justice Department stood up the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, a prosecutor task force with expertise in money laundering, computer crime, and virtual asset forfeiture. Months later, the FBI formally activated its Virtual Assets Unit within the Criminal Investigative Division's Financial Crime section. Alongside those internal resources, private sector blockchain analytics firms, Chainalysis, Elliptic, TRM Labs, serve as standard operational partners in federal cryptocurrency investigations. Their software clusters related wallet addresses, identifies exchange deposit points, flags laundering consistent patterns, and produces court-admissible reports. When the Bureau opens a cryptocurrency case, these firms are not optional. They are the operating standard. The public record of what these capabilities have actually produced is instructive and more complicated than most coverage suggests. Ross Ulbricht, the Silk Road operator, is the foundational case. His identification did not come from blockchain analysis. It came from an IRS agent who traced a forum username, Altoid, across early Silk Road promotional posts until one of those posts revealed an email address containing Ulbricht's full legal name. Blockchain evidence supported the prosecution. It did not produce the arrest. The Colonial Pipeline recovery in 2021, 63.7 of 75 Bitcoin recovered from the DarkSide ransomware payment, came through the Bureau obtaining the private key to a specific wallet, a feat dependent on blockchain tracing combined with traditional investigative access to the infrastructure holding the key. The Bitfinex recovery, $3.6 billion, seized at the arrest of Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan, ultimately broke on a Walmart gift card, redemption connected to Morgan's name, which led to a search warrant, which produced a cloud storage file containing the wallet private keys. Blockchain analysis was the foundation. A gift card was the door. The pattern is consistent across every major case. Blockchain analysis is a force multiplier, not an identification mechanism. It works best when it delivers funds to a point where traditional investigative tools, subpoenas, search warrants, informants, open source intelligence, can take over. Coffin Daffer's proposal implicitly runs on the same architecture. The deposit starts the trace. The trace has to land somewhere that legal process can reach. Step 1 requires blockchain analysis. Step 2 requires everything else the Bureau already knows how to do. 75 days into this investigation, there is a detail that reframes everything. The kidnapper, the person or persons who actually appeared on Nancy Guthrie's porch with a weapon, has never sent a credible ransom demand. Not one. The scammer has sent multiple. The silence from the actual kidnapper, combined with blood evidence on the porch, a DNA-positive glove 2 miles from the scene, and a surveillance image that has not yet produced a named suspect, has led multiple former agents, including Coffin Daffer herself, to a conclusion nobody in the family's public circle has said out loud: that Nancy Guthrie may not be alive. That the kidnappers never attempted to close a ransom transaction because they had no proof of life to offer. If that is true, then the scammer is not filling a ransom gap. They are exploiting a silence that exists because the worst has already happened. What the Coffin Daffer proposal produces, even if the worst hypothesis is correct, is not nothing. Sending a ransom note for a crime you did not commit is a federal crime. Title 18, United States Code, Section 875B. Extortion through interstate communication. The penalty is up to 20 years in federal prison. Every note the sender has transmitted to TMZ or to a Tucson television station is a separate commission of that offense. Wire fraud. Obstruction of justice if the notes meaningfully diverted investigative resources. Impersonation in a federal investigation. Each charge is independently prosecutable. The Bureau does not need to wait for the sender to connect themselves to the actual abduction. A successful trace produces a person in federal custody. That person may have no idea where Nancy Guthrie is. Coffin Daffer has been explicit about this. But a person in federal custody is a person who can be investigated, interviewed, potentially flipped on whoever they heard the information from. The scammer may have seen the original ransom communications from genuine suspects and built their own notes around details that leaked. They may have moved in circles where the abduction was discussed before it was public. None of that is guaranteed. All of it becomes accessible only if the sender has a name, and the sender only gets a name if the wallet moves, and the wallet only moves if something gets deposited into it. That is the full logic chain. And it is not a straight line to Nancy Guthrie. It is the last available crooked one. The counter-arguments are real. A payment to a ransom sender, even framed as an investigative tool, validates the business model. It signals to every future extortionist monitoring high-profile cases that notes like these can produce payment. It sets a precedent other families will face. It creates a news cycle. The Guthrie family will have to navigate on top of everything else. Coffin Daffer has acknowledged all of this. Her answer is not that the costs don't exist. Her answer is that the alternative is a cold address and an anonymous sender who keeps writing notes indefinitely, and that $34,000 is a proportionate price to close that particular loop. The family made their position clear in February. In a direct video statement, Savannah's siblings said, "This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay." Coffin Daffer is not asking them to make a decision they haven't already made. She is asking them to make a different version of it. One where the payment is structured, not as a transaction with a counterparty who cannot deliver, but as a deposit into a forensic system that at minimum produces intelligence and at maximum produces a prosecution. The evidentiary base of this investigation is not thin. Doorbell camera footage of a masked, armed suspect. Blood evidence on the porch of a 71-year-old woman's home. A black glove recovered 2 miles away, submitted for DNA analysis and running against the CODIS database. Purchase records for backpack and gear items visible in the surveillance footage, traced to Walmart stores in the Tucson area. These are real leads. Open fronts. Work is ongoing on all of them. What the case has not produced, as of this posting, is the single piece of evidence that converts an investigation into a prosecution. The DNA from the glove has not been publicly matched. The surveillance footage has not been publicly connected to a named suspect. The Walmart trace has not produced a public lead. And the Bitcoin wallet from the first ransom note, if Harvey Levin's on-record statement is accurate, has been exhausted. 75 days is not a short time. It is not a long time. It is the window within which complex cases either produce a charging decision or settle into a longer operational phase. This case has settled into the longer phase. The Pima County Sheriff's Department, leading the investigation with FBI support, has said publicly that all tips and leads are being taken seriously and passed directly to detectives. The Bureau's Phoenix field office has coordinated the federal component. The Virtual Assets Unit has had the ransom note wallets on its radar since February. And one retired FBI agent with 30 years of Title III surveillance experience has gone public. Not in a whisper network, not in a private briefing, but on a verified social media account, in a named Newsweek interview, on a podcast with her name on the banner, with a specific tactical proposal at a specific dollar amount. Former agents with active relationships inside the Bureau do not typically do that unless they have concluded that the public conversation is the more useful pressure point than a private one. The fact that she has gone public is itself a signal about where she believes this investigation actually stands. Nancy Guthrie remains missing. The second Bitcoin wallet remains untested. The kidnapper has never sent a credible demand. The scammer has sent 4 notes and is still anonymous. Everything in this analysis is built on public statements, verified reporting, and the on-record words of people whose names are attached to them. No accusation has been made against any individual. The case continues. Before you go, there is one question at the center of everything Coffin Daffer has proposed, and it doesn't have a clean answer. She is a former federal agent with 3 decades of operational experience, recommending a specific tactic, in public, by name, at a specific price point, on an active federal case. That is not something agents do casually. It is either a signal that she believes the investigation needs external pressure to move, or it is a signal that she believes the Bureau has already made its decision and the public deserves to know what framework the family is operating inside. The scammer has been sending notes for more than 2 months. The FBI has not announced an arrest for the extortion. The kidnapper has never surfaced. So here is the question, and I want you to answer it in the comments, because this one actually matters. Do you think Coffin Daffer is proposing this publicly because she genuinely believes it's the right move for the family, or because she believes the Bureau has quietly told the family not to pay, and she disagrees?